Hello, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us on day 12 of the Learning Festival, brought to you by Crimson Education in collaboration with the Jain Group of Institutions, Bangalore, Jain International Residential School, and the Crimson Anisha Global Schools in Pune. It's nice to see that our number of participants, as I was just telling Dr. Swati before, we admitted all of you, that we've had a constant number of participants. So it's nice, the fatigue that we're talking about, in terms of online teaching and learning has not set in with all of you as educators. The enthusiasm with which you joined our first day in the Learning Festival, the same continues till today. So thank you very much for your participation. So our speaker today is Dr. Swati Popat. So Dr. Swati is again someone who needs absolutely no introduction. She's been a global educator with more than 3 decades of experience and holds several important positions in the field of early childhood education. She's the president of the ECA, the Early Childhood Association of India, and also APER, the Association of Primary Education and Research, a national representative and a member of the planning committee of the World Forum Foundation, and also a member of the global think tank for Kidzania. She's also the expert behind the Tata Sky Active Viz Kids channel, and also recently set up the world's first video-based parenting website, Born Smart, which helps parents understand the importance of brain development in the first 1,000 days. That's when the child is born up to 3 years. Dr. Swati has also penned several books for all stakeholders, right, from parents, students, as well as teachers, and is very, very active on social media. She regularly blogs, she tweets all about everything about education, especially early years. So it's indeed a privilege at Crimson Education to have with us noted educator Dr. Swati. Looking forward to a very interesting, exciting sessions. Over to you, Dr. Swati.
Thank you so much, Hussein. Thank you for that introduction. I usually get embarrassed when people introduce me, but thank you so much for that. And I must thank the entire team of Crimson for inviting me, especially Francis, Farzana ma'am, and you, of course. So you all are doing such great work in education that I have to congratulate all of you all. Keep rocking the world of education. So hello everybody and welcome to this session. I'm going to try and keep it as short and sweet as possible because we Indians have a sweet tooth. So we have to learn to keep things short and sweet. Let's go to the next slide. We are all celebrating the national education policy, our new national education policy. And it's worth celebrating because not only that after so many years we have a new education policy, but because for the first time now it is recognized and accepted that 85% of the cumulative brain development of children happens in the first 6 years, which means now it is easier for us to explain to parents the importance of the early years. And especially so because the new education policy now says foundational years, which means the 3 years, 3 to 6 years and 2 years of primary. So it is very, very crucial to understand how we can better things during these early years. Next slide, please. Mahatma Gandhi, as you all know, wrote the first basic education policy. But not many people know that 6 months after he wrote the Nai Talim, which is the basic education, he wrote pre-basic. And this is a quotation that I love of Mahatma Gandhi. He says, we labor under a sort of superstition that child has nothing to learn during the first 5 years of life. On the contrary, the fact is the child never learns in afterlife what it does in the first 5 years. It's very, very important for us to understand that whenever we think that, oh, children are only playing, they are not learning anything in the early years, it's important to keep this quotation in mind. And the rest of the workshop is going to focus on why the early years are important and how can we ensure that we understand its importance and are able to communicate it to all stakeholders. Let's see the next slide. Maria Montessori, who's called the mother of early childhood education around the globe, also had something very similar to say. She said the most important period of life is not the age of university studies, but the first one, the period from birth to the age of 6. Whereas in our country, we love to spend a lot of money on our university studies. Parents save a lot of money for university studies. But even now, you must have seen during the lockdown, parents feel, why invest in early and primary years? Well, these are two important quotations to share with parents to help them understand that the importance of the early years is because the foundation of all learning starts from there. If those years are weak, the foundation is weak, the child will have learning difficulties in the primary, secondary, and senior secondary. Let's go to the next slide. It's very, very important for us to understand that the national education policy stresses on flexible, multifaceted, multi-level, play-based. So it's talking very much about play as the foundation of all learning. It's very important for teachers to understand what is this play-based, and does it mean that children won't learn? So let's understand that. Next slide, please. So this play-based learning that NEP stresses on, many of the teachers, when asked about it, why play in the early years, are unable to answer that. Let's see the next slide and you will understand that the right brain of a child develops first, which means when brain development is happening in the early years, it's more on the right brain. And this happens during the ages of up to 4 years. Which means we have to understand, what does this right brain require? Let's go to the next slide. This left brain, right brain theory was first given by Dr. Roger Sperry. He also got the Nobel Prize for his split brain research. And prior to that, not many people knew about what is right brain, left brain learning. Some people like to call it blue brain and pink brain, and that's not right. Brain is not gender biased. Let's go to the next slide. So this right brain that we are talking about is actually in charge of long-term memory, which means anything that you teach the child will have to ultimately go into long-term memory if you want the child to retain it and recall it, because that's the goal of education, right? We want children to learn, but we also want children to remember what they have learned. So the right brain plays an important role in ensuring long-term memory. So it is very, very important to understand, if our goal is to ensure that whatever we teach children goes in the long-term memory, then we must understand how to stimulate the right brain. Let's go to the next slide. School curriculum today is very left brain oriented. You will see that we focus more on listening, we focus more on writing. So we have a teacher who constantly talks, children have to listen, and then we want the children to fill up lots of pages. That is left brain learning. Children learn by songs, art, visuals, and that is right brain learning. And that's why right brain learners feel very left out in this left brain learning environment. They struggle with learning because learning is not play-based. And that, my friends, is the importance and the meaning of play-based learning. Play is the need of the right brain. The right brain develops first, and the right brain is in charge of your long-term memory. If this simple fact is clear to all of us, then we wouldn't be asking the question, why play, or how much play, or is play important? We would be trying our best to convince the parents and to educate them about this, that it's your child's right brain which is developing now. The right brain will thrive on play-based activities. So if teachers were to understand this clearly, they will be able to communicate it very, very clearly to parents. Let's go to the next slide. So it is very important to understand that when you use left brain techniques, children will need repetition. Children will need again and again. So it is very important that if you use right brain techniques like art, singing, dancing, stories, rhymes, etc., it benefits both kind of learners. It benefits the left brain learners and the right brain learners. Then why? Why should we not have right brain activities in the curriculum when it's going to make life easier for everybody? Let's go to the next slide. This slide is going to give you a kind of a comparison on what are left brain activities and what are right brain activities. So you can have a look at it once you have the slide with you. But it's very, very important to understand that when we talk about left and right brain techniques, we are not saying do only right brain techniques. But even if you want to teach left brain concepts, it's better to do it in play-based, because then children will understand it faster and retain it longer. That is what we are talking about. Let's go to the next slide. So a lot of teachers and parents especially feel that if the school is teaching through play, then it must be teaching less, because they feel jitna rote learning hoga, jitna drill based is there, then it's much better. I must see more books that my child is having, otherwise it's not learning. So we have to help these parents understand that just because you see more play, it doesn't mean less learning is happening. The last paragraph on this slide is very important. It says, because a program uses playful ways to build children's success, does not mean the curriculum is not rigorous or academic. It means it is just right for what's best for a 3, 4, 5, and 6-year-old child. It's very, very important to understand that play is the engine of learning, which means when I teach children in a play-based manner, I am getting their attention faster, I am getting their interest faster, and I am getting their memory to be activated faster. So that is the meaning of the importance of play-based learning. Let's go to the next slide. This is an important visual that I like to show parents, that this is what a normal early childhood classroom looks like, and parents feel, but where's the learning happening? All these areas are play areas. So it is very important for teachers to understand and use this poster to help parents understand, when you see a child playing with blocks, is it just play happening, or is the child learning about colors, shape, size, physics, movement, force, etc. So it is very, very important to understand that foundational years is a very key term used in the national education policy. They purposely use the word foundational, because if you study Maria Montessori's sensitive periods, you will realize that the window of learning of all the important subjects of school life are actually in the early years. You tap this window at the right time, your child will get foundational learning success. You miss out on this window, children will learn later, but it will be more difficult to learn, and it will be more of an anxious process for children to learn. So that's the difference. You need to ensure that children have play in the early years, and play is not just chhod diya, let them play. It is about understanding how children learn through play. Let's look at the next slide. So learning has 3 processes. It has brain, it has the senses, and it has muscles. So true learning, any lesson plan that you plan, have a look at it and ask yourself, do I see the brain involved in this? Do I see the senses involved in this? And do I see muscles involved in this? Mahatma Gandhi called it the head, the heart, and the hand, which means head means, am I giving enough scope to the child to think? Senses means, what are the maximum number of senses that I'm involving of the children in this particular lesson? For example, we may plan a lesson which has only children looking at some pictures. Then that means you've only used one sense. But if the same time I'm talking to them, or I am giving them an opportunity to talk or to touch, that means I'm involving more senses. Senses also means heart, as Mahatma Gandhi said, that give me some emotional ability to think also about a particular subject. Don't confuse me. For example, you are teaching the children about plants, and you are talking to them about leaves, and you are saying that a leaf makes the food for the plant. And so then to wind up the subject, you give them leaf printing, and you give them leaf rubbing. now you are suddenly taken away the heart part of your lesson, because heart means you must make me feel about how I can contribute to this particular subject. Now you told me the leaf makes the food for the plant. So then you are making me paint with this leaf. Now you will say, but no, it was fallen leaves that we took. But there won't be every time a fallen leaf available for a child to be doing these kind of activities. So it is very, very important to understand that you are sending out a wrong message with your follow-up activity, especially because the lesson was on plants. So senses is not just about your 5 senses. It's also about the heart, which means my understanding of my contribution, which you have to instill also in the early years. And muscles, of course, is sometimes, we turn our early childhood classrooms into just sitting spaces. Bas, children have to sit all the time. We need to give them movement. We need to ensure that we are helping them move their fingers, their faces, their heads, their shoulders, their body, their feet, and their hands. So a lesson plan is perfect only when it involves these 3: the head, the senses, and the muscles. Head means brain. Brain means thinking. Thinking means hot. Hot means higher order thinking skills. The way you ask questions to children also must change. Don't ask questions which will only get a yes and no answer from children. Did you like the picnic? Yes. Do you like eating ice creams? Yes. So don't ask yes and no questions. Ask questions in which the child will be motivated to speak. What did you like about the field trip? Why do you like to eat an ice cream? Now I will have to talk and explain my answer to you, and that is higher order thinking. For example, if I'm going to ask you a simple question now, and I want you all to type the answer on the chat box, okay? And do it immediately. Don't think too much. We are all adults. We don't need to think too much, because my question is very simple. My question is, what color is the sky? Come on, quickly type your answer. What color is the sky? Quickly. Yes, I got blue, blue, blue. I got sky blue. I got gray, blah, 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 blue, 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 blue. Very good. Very nice. So I've got majority blues. Now I'm going to ask you another question, and I want you to quickly type the answer again. No waiting for the answer. No Googling, please. So my next question is, why is the sky blue in color? Come on, quickly type the answer. Why is the sky blue in color? And I get a pause. And that's called a pregnant pause. Oh, reflection. Somebody says reflection. Okay, because we feel so. Okay, so maximum answer I'm getting is reflection. Reflection of the water. So in a desert, why is the sky blue is my question. A reflection of water. Reflection of the ocean and sea. Then why is the sky blue in places where there is no water? Yes. Now this, my friends, tells you that when you studied in school, your school taught you only one answer to the question, what color is the sky? Today, when you ask this question to children, please ask this question in your next virtual session, and you may get a lot more answers from your children. They may say red, they may say orange. Some smart children may even ask you, at what time of the day? So, and you will say, don't ask me such questions. But yes, the child is right. You are asking me the color of the sky at what time of the day? And the answer to the question, why is the sky blue in color, is not reflection, it is refraction. So it is very, very important to understand today's child is least interested in these simple questions. So today's child will ask you, why does a cow have horns and a dog does not? So these are the kind of questions children love to ask. And these are the kind of questions you should be asking children. Because in these kind of questions, there is no right and there is no wrong. There is thinking involved. So change the way you ask questions to children. Let's go to the next slide. Choices. The brain loves choices, especially young children's brain. So when you start the day with choices, it kind of revs up the engine of the brain. You know how you rev up the engine of a car? At the beginning of the day, the best way to rev up the engine of the brain is by giving a child choices. So when you tell the child, okay, today for breakfast, do you want the blue plate or the yellow plate? So then the child has a choice. That means the child is now thinking about the choice. And that's the best way to rev up the brain. And that's why schools should also start the greeting process of the day with a choice. As you can see on the slide, children are given 3 choices. How would you like to be greeted by the teacher? Now they have to think and they have a choice. So when you give a choice, 2 things happen. The child has to think and the child gets the boost of autonomy, which means independence, which means I matter and I can. So it boosts their self-esteem, it kickstarts their brain, and that's the best way to start the day with children. If you want the children to be, if you don't want the children to have too many choices, then the best way to do it is like this. For example, when you are asking a child to go to sleep, and you say, it's time to go to bed now. And the child says, please give me 5 more minutes, 5 more minutes. So you say, okay, 5 more minutes. And then the child keeps on dragging things. Like in our daycare, when we want children to go to bed, we tell them, would you like to go to bed with a teddy bear or a doll? So the choice is not going to sleep. The choice is, what are you going to go to sleep with? So it is very, very important to understand, when teachers understand the importance of giving choices to children, children respond positively to choices because it boosts their self-esteem and it makes their brain think. Please understand why thinking is important. Have you ever used the term or heard the term, children are behaving like monkeys? Many a times I hear teachers say, these children behave like monkeys. Why is this term there? This is your thinking cortex. This is from where your brain thinks. And this is the only difference between us and the monkeys. The monkeys don't have a thinking cortex. So when you don't make children think, they are not using their thinking cortex. No wonder they behave like monkeys. If you want them to behave like humans, you need to make them use their thinking cortex. And that is why hot questions. Let's go to the next slide. The brain requires a few things, and diet is one of them. You need to avoid a lot of excessive salt and sugar. Did you know that 1 packet of popcorn has a week's content of salt? And salt can cause blood pressure. Salt can cause hyperactivity. So it is very, very important to give and monitor a child's salt and sugar content, and most importantly, additives. When we say that Maggi is bad for children, or Kurkure is bad for children, or packaged food is bad for children, why is it bad? Understand that. These packaged foods have chemicals for giving them a longer shelf life. And these are called additives. And additives harm the growing neurons in young children's brains. So till the age of 6 years, we must control the amount of junk food that children eat, because otherwise brain development will be hampered. Let's go to the next slide. One of the other things that children's brains require is sleep. We have a sleep cycle of around 9 hours, and 9 hours is required. If you don't get 9 hours of sleep every day, you tend to become more cranky, more, at the smallest stimulation, you will lose your temper, etc., etc. And we women suffer a lot from sleep loss. And that's why I'm a woman, so I can say it, that's why we are constantly irritated and constantly short-fused, because we don't get 9 hours of sleep. The men somehow find, I don't know how, they find their 9 hours of sleep. And that's why they are so calm and patient all the time. So all the ladies on this workshop, please get your 9 hours of sleep and see what a lovely time you will have. So maybe you can snatch that extra sleep from your husband and take it. If you're not married, good for you. You must be getting your 9 hours of sleep. But why is 9 hours of sleep important? The body and brain divide it. 4.5 hours, the blood supply goes throughout the body and it repairs all the damaged cells and rejuvenates them. 4.5 hours, at the end of the 9 hours, the blood supply goes more to the brain and it organizes all the learning of that particular day. Now, if I'm sleeping for 8 hours, either the blood supply time for my body is less, which means I will fall sick more often, I will have more cold, cough, fever, etc. And otherwise, I will lose my memory, which means I won't be able to retain things as much. 9 hours, very important. It's a good habit to have, especially now during Corona. Please have your 9 hours of sleep. Next slide, please. It's also very important that during virtual learning now, children are not getting many opportunities to use their bodies. And remember, we said 3 parts of the learning process. One is your brain, one is your senses, and one is your muscles. Children are not getting enough opportunities to use their muscles or to use activity. So it is very important for us to look at this slide. This is what a child wants to do every day. So in your virtual learning also, you will have to look at your curriculum planning. Am I giving the child opportunity to do all this? If not, I should give it in their home play, which means their parent-child interaction, whatever activities you are giving, because children need these activities every day. They are great for brain development. Now you will see a word called pinch here, and you will see pinch. How do I give pinch? Well, you do pinch clay, you pinch plasticine. So please put your teacher brain together and look at these words and think, how can I give the opportunity to the child to do these movements or actions? Let's go to the next slide. Friends, please understand, we are teachers, we are educators, we are not babysitters. So please do not take activities from Pinterest just because they look nice and can decorate a child's house. Please think, what is the benefit of this activity to the brain development of children? That is very, very important. Let's go to the next slide. And let us understand that when we do reading with children, reading is how do I say it? It is a very complex activity for children. You know why? Language has a center in the brain, which means there is a part of the brain that's responsible for speaking, for listening. But there is no one single part of the brain responsible for reading. So when I want to read, a lot of parts of the brain will have to get involved. So it's a very complex activity. It is, our human brain was never geared for reading. So it is very, very important for us to understand that before we start reading, we need to do reading in a playway method. How? Let's see the next slide. It's called the MVAL method. Okay. So M stands for motor control. If you just click again, Hussein, I think the rest of the material will come. So M stands for motor control. Okay, leave it here. M stands for motor control. V stands for visual discrimination. A stands for audio discrimination. And that leads to language, which leads to reading. So if you look at the activities on this slide, you will realize that what looks like play to us, jigsaws, painting, what looks like play to us is actually developing a very important aspect needed for reading. So when I say motor control, my eyes have to move in a particular fashion. When I'm reading from the blackboard and coming back to my book, I will need that kind of a motor control. And these activities are going to help me get that motor control. Visual discrimination, I should be able to discriminate. I always say, why do we need to correct children's books? You know, if I had the visual discrimination as a child to understand that A looks like this, and what I have written is not A. Do you understand that? That is visual discrimination that is required. And that is why children who lack this visual discrimination end up making mistakes. So we tend to make them write A more often as a corrective measure. No, You will need to give them more visual discrimination activities, because this child is not able to make out when he's writing the wrong A that this is wrong. So you don't need to make the child drilled write A more often. You need to give them more visual discrimination activities. And of course, audio discrimination. Sounds require audio discrimination. So when you start reading, it is called pre-reading, which in the national education policy is called foundational literacy and numeracy. Let's go to the next slide. Mahatma Gandhi said that good handwriting is necessary part of education. But I am now of the opinion that children should first be taught the art of drawing before learning how to write. And this he said many years back. And what are we doing? We are still making children write and not making them draw before writing. Let's understand this quotation by Mahatma Gandhi. Ultimately, every letter is a pattern, isn't it? So if I can draw different patterns, I will be able to write letters. And I love that line of his which says that when we make drawing as the foundation of writing, children will learn to draw and not scroll the alphabet. Very important to understand that when we complain about bad handwriting, they are just scrolling the letters because they have no connection to that letter. They're not interested. So it is very, very important that when we are trying to teach handwriting to children, that also needs to be taught in a playway method. Let's go to the next slide. There are some activities that help children develop their writing muscles. And in the next few slides, I'm going to show you these activities and the reason why these activities are required for writing. So balancing. Balancing is required because when I sit for longer periods of time to write, I will need the sense of balance. I need balance control to be able to sit for longer periods. Parachute play is a fantastic activity because in writing, we think only fingers are involved. No, my wrist is involved for fluency. My hand, elbow, my arm is all involved, because if I hold the pencil tight because I'm not able to relax, it's going to pain and my handwriting is going to be bad. Let's go to the next slide. If you see scissoring, we rarely give scissors in early years classrooms because we're very scared children will hurt themselves. They won't. They won't hurt themselves if you make them think, if you tell them the right rules. And scissoring is important because it's using the same 3 fingers that we use for holding a pencil. Nature activities. Remember we talked about visual discrimination? Nature activities like giving a child a picture of a leaf and asking them to go and find it in the garden. A, it helps you do outdoor activity. B, it helps you do visual discrimination because it helps children see patterns and they become more aware of patterns, similarities, differences, etc. Let's go to the next slide. Throwing and catching a ball. Maria Montessori said that if a child can catch a ball, then a child is ready to hold a pencil. Why did she say that? It requires eye-hand coordination to copy something with your pencil. I need to know, like for example, let me tell you, if I have to look at the blackboard and copy something in my book, my pencil is on the book, my eyes are on the blackboard, and I'm copying. Can you see this eye-hand coordination? So it's very, very important to understand, throw a ball, catch a ball, the children will have eye-hand coordination. Origami and paper folding, because listening to instructions, when you will do dictation, when you will dictate things to children, they should have listening skills. Auditory discrimination, listening skills. In your virtual sessions, do podcasts for children. So they will see no screen, they will have to hear. So a podcast is a very important part of virtual learning. Let's go to the next slide. Maths again has to be taught in all the fun places. Fun places in the classroom like block area, dramatic area, cooking area, art, playground, etc., etc. Let's go to the next slide. Again, in maths, there are some foundational skills important. Remember, the national education policy talks about foundational numeracy. So teach math through reasoning. Give them reasoning activities. I find Frobel's gifts the best to teach children reasoning activities. Google search, Frobel's gifts. Just like Maria Montessori has didactic equipment, Frobel had gifts. Teach math through activities of guessing and estimation, because it helps children understand quantity. When I guess how much I'm holding in my hand, I am visualizing the quantity and I am coming to a certain conclusion. And then I come to know, no, this is not what 9 looks like. This is how much 10 looks like. So before you go into showing a number, a numeral to a child should know what that numeral stands for. Like, for example, when you show a letter A to a child, you say A says A. So the child knows that whenever I see A, I must say A. Similarly, when I see the number 4, what should I be thinking of? I should be thinking of 4 objects. So that's called teaching maths through reasoning and helping children understand number value and not just rote learning. There are a lot of schools that say our children can recite numbers till 500. But if you ask the children in the class to count and give you 63 objects, they are unable to do that. So maths is not about recitation. Maths is about understanding quantity and understanding that this numeral stands for a particular quantity. Let's go to the next slide. Maths can also be taught again in the outdoors. When I look at a pattern, when I look at a shape, it is also number education happening. And this on the right hand side is a fantastic activity I love to do. Is I take children to the outdoors, I make them sleep on the grass and look up at the sky. If there are clouds there, have a look at the shape of the clouds. Now make those shapes through blocks. So when you make the children do the shapes on a piece of paper, that's 2D. But when I make them make the shapes through blocks, I'm suddenly making them think in 3D. That's called design thinking. And that's what maths is all about. Maths is about shapes. Maths is about corners, triangles, sizes. I must be experiencing things in 3 dimensions for me to understand geometry later. Next slide. Maria Montessori, as I said, has fantastic equipment for the teaching of maths, foundational maths especially, foundational numeracy. And I love her 3-dimensional objects because she and Frobel both focused on first exposing children through 3D, then to 2D, and then to lines and points. Let's go to the next slide. Again, your favorite activity, parachute play, can help children learn a lot of math concepts like positional words, movement, distance words, etc. So when you are doing parachute play with children, use these words because then they get the understanding of the meaning of these words in math. Let's go to the next slide. You know, we think that graphs is for older children. Well, graphs can be done in everyday life and give children a foundation of graphs. For example, if you see the picture on the left, at the bottom are all the activities done on that day. And then each child comes and votes which activity did they like the best. So that's all their names. Now you will see an automatic graph has formed. And this will help children understand which activity got the most number of votes, which activity got the least number. So they get an idea about what a graph looks like. You may not teach them a graph, what is the meaning, but what they are doing is actually foundational graphing. Let's go to the next slide. Venn diagrams are very, very important and when you are teaching children about one-to-one correspondence. So when you are telling children, say, for example, you're teaching children about vehicles and you say there are long distance vehicles and there are short distance vehicles. So vehicles used for long distance journeys, vehicles used for short distance journeys, but there are some that are used for both. So they come in the middle. So this teaches children categories. And then it teaches children that there can be categories within the categories. For example, you will tell children to pick up all the big blocks. So that's one category. Now from those big blocks, you will say, now I want you to put all the blue blocks on one side and all the red blocks on the other side. So now you have red big blocks and you have blue big blocks. Now you can keep on making these categories. So it is very important for children to understand that sometimes some things can belong to multiple categories, and that is very, very important. So let's go to the next slide. Learning requires senses, and that is why art is there in our curriculum. For example, we talk about STEM learning. Now, STEM has become STEAM. Why? Because art is a very, very, very crucial part of early childhood education, and art has to be there in everyday learning. Let's go to the next slide. But please don't do this. What the heck happened? I was minding my own business when somebody snatched me up, dipped my feet in yellow paint, pressed them on a piece of paper, plopped me down, and suddenly it's a duck. Don't do these kind of pachak activities. I call them pachak activities. You know, we take a child's hand, we dip it in paint, and when you pachak, and then we draw the outline around it and say, see, that's a turkey. Oh my God, the child feels, but I didn't do anything of this. So please don't do these kind of senseless art activities which make no sense to a child. Let's see the next slide. And there's one example of a senseless art activity where you paint colors on a child's palm and then you go pachak and then you draw the face and you say, now we got a Santa Claus. It's not helping the child at all. It's called a candy floss art activity. Let's go to the next slide. If I were in a conference with you or a workshop, live workshop with you, I would have told you, take out your piece of paper and draw a house. And I can guarantee you, all of you would have drawn a house with a roof, one door, two windows, smoke coming out of the chimney, sun on the left-hand corner, and one tree. Yes or no? Everybody around the world draws a house like this. I don't know why. Do we live in a house like this? No, but we all draw a house like this. You know why? Because the illustrations that we see in our books have somewhere stunted our creativity. So we need to be very careful about the illustrations we give children in their workbooks, in their worksheets. Don't stunt their creativity. When I asked 5-year-olds to draw a house, many of them drew the inside of a house. They drew a kitchen, they drew a living room, they drew a bedroom. For them, that's a house. So art and creativity go hand in hand. There is no right or wrong in art. I can't understand how you can have an exam in art, how you can give marks for art. Oh my God, we wouldn't have had Mona Lisa if the painter was ever given marks for art. So it's very, very important to understand visual arts. Arts are a form of expression. They are a form of emotion. They are a form of creativity, which will be personalized for every child, which is individual for every child. Don't kill it. Don't kill it with this house. Next slide, please. Art is not for competing, as I said. Art is not for seeing who draws better. No, we all draw well. We all draw in our own unique manner. Keep that one subject at least where you celebrate each child rather than compare each child. Next slide, please. Now I'll tell you left brain activity and right brain activity. Can you see this book? Can you see on the right hand side? It's written number 4 and the number name of 4. That's actually a left brain activity. It is drill based. Children have to write. But if you see on the right, on the left hand side, you will see the painting, the drawing done by every child. And for the same activity, if you see, everybody has written the same, but their drawings are all different. And that is where you understand that even if I have to give some drill-based activity to children, let me supplement it with play-based activity for children to enjoy that activity. Let's go to the next slide. Now, brain is also involved in behavior. So if we are talking about right brain, making it fun, you need to make behavior management also fun for children. Let's go to the next slide. Very, very important to understand, behavior always has a cause. Behavior is always linked to emotional development. So when you are trying to instill good behavior in children, do it in the way that it shows that you care. Doesn't show that you are a policeman, shows that you care. Let's go to the next slide. We always tell children, walk in a line, put your hands behind your back, walk in a line. Simple way to do that. Tell children to make a butterfly and tell them to flap their butterfly. Now tell them, can you make this butterfly behind your back? So children will learn to hold their hands behind their back and flap their butterflies behind their back. So automatically their hands are safe. They are not touching anything and they are walking one behind the other. Very important. Let's go to the next slide. There are certain games that you must play in your classroom, even in your virtual classroom, because these contribute to a brain break and these help children think. So games like Simon Says, red light, green light. Red light, green light means you're all going to dance, and when I show you a red light, you will stop. When I show you a green light, you will start again. So these are all very important games because, as I said, it helps the child think, focus, pay attention. Let's go to the next slide. Singing. Do you know that singing is very important for the brain? Let me show you the next slide. Why is singing important for the brain? So when you sing, the words get processed in one side of the brain and the rhythm gets processed in the other side of the brain. So when you sing, both sides of the brain have to communicate, and that is the worthwhileness of singing to children. You may keep on saying, sit straight, children will not listen to you. Are you sitting? Are you sitting? Sit down straight, sit down straight. Let us all sit straight, let us all sit straight, sit down straight. When you will sing, children will listen more to you and children will relate to it. When you keep on droning the same thing again and again, children switch off. But they switch on the minute you start singing. Have you noticed how they love advertisements on television? Because it's singing, there are songs. Left brain, right brain communication is very essential for brain development. So when you sing, when you climb the jungle gym, when you march, your left and right side are communicating. So please have more singing. Are you sitting? Are you sitting on the floor? On the floor. Teacher is ready. Teacher is ready for you all. For you all. You don't have to be a great singer on Indian Idol to be able to sing to your children. Look at me with my squeaky voice also. I can sing. So learn to sing. Let's go to the next slide. Nobody said that, ma'am, you have a good voice. Nobody said that. Anyway, here are some songs for all of you. Use the common nursery rhymes tunes that we already know. So this is on the tune of Mary Had a Little Lamb. So Mary had a little lamb. This is how we learn to share, learn to share, learn to share. This is how we learn to share every day at school. So learn to sing songs to bring discipline in the classroom, because singing involves the brain, and brain means your child will not behave like a monkey. Let's go to the next slide. Verbal cues are very important for children. Please talk to children according to the age that they are, which means if I'm a 2-year-old, talk to me in a sentence that has 2 parts. Like, tell me, come here and sit down. Tell me that together. Don't say, come here, then wait, and then say, sit down. No. I've seen many nursery class teachers talk to 3-year-olds like that. That means you're talking to the child as if the child's brain is of a 2-year-old. So then the child's brain will become that of a 2-year-old. Now, you are all adults, right? So I'm going to give you some instructions. Quickly, we're going to play this game. I'm going to give you some instructions. Let me see if you were able to remember and do all the instructions, and no cheating. Okay, so I'm going to quickly give you instructions. Listen carefully and don't start from the first instruction. First, listen to all the instructions. I want you all to stand up. I want you all to give a big jump. I want you to smile. I want you to touch your chin, touch your nose, pull your ears, take a big jump and sit down. Did you get all the instructions? Were you able to remember all of them? Aha. Thank you for being frank. But this is how we talk to children in a class. We say, good morning, children. I want you all to take out your maths book, go to page 34, look at the blackboard and sit straight. And we say so many things together. And what happens is children, after the second instruction, they're looking at each other. What did she say? What did she say? Because in the early years, we have not geared their brains to listen to instructions together. And did you know, my friends, that at any age that you are, you cannot listen and hold on to more than 4 instructions. It's impossible. So it is important for teachers to understand after the age of 4, don't talk to children with more than 4 instructions. So you can say, take out your maths book, open to page 64, look at the blackboard. You can say that together, provided in the early years, the teacher has trained them to listen like that. Because I have noticed many times early years teachers baby talk to children and then their thinking skills get hampered. Let's go to the next slide. Routine is very important in the early years because the brain thrives on routine in the first 6 years. You break the routine, children become cranky. So please keep routine in mind. Let's go to the next slide. In the next few slides, I'm going to show you some songs that we are teaching children, which is impacting their social emotional development. Next slide. Let's see the song Humpty Dumpty. We are telling children to be careful. We're telling children, oh, don't talk about death to children. But here we sing a happy song about Humpty Dumpty, who poor fellow fell down and broke into pieces and nobody could put him together again. And we sing it very happily. At the time when we are teaching emotional intelligence to children, don't teach that contradictory song. Teach the new one. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty did not have a fall. He knew how to be careful. He knew how to play. And that is why he's in one piece today. So think the new ones. Next one, please. We sing a song called Piggy on the Railway, picking up stones. Down came an engine, broke Piggy's bones. Out said the piggy, that's not fair. Oh, said the engine driver, I don't care. And we're teaching children at that age to have manners, to think about others. Sing the new version. Out said the piggy, that's not fair. Oh, said the engine driver, I will take more care. Next one. Ringa Ringa Roses. It is the song of the plague in London where people were falling sick and having red rings on their faces. They used to have poises in their pocket. Poises were funeral flowers because they were running from one funeral to the other. And the last stage of the plague was that they would sneeze and fall down dead. And that's the plague song that we sing to our children happily in the class. Change it, please. Round and round the rose bush, we like to smell the roses. Halla, gulla, we never pluck the roses. Change, change, bring in change. Next one, please. When children come to our physical school after the pandemic, emotional development is going to be the most important. And we have a song in the early years called Where is Thumbkin? Very important to teach children about the feelings. But we use this song only to teach children, how are you this morning? Very well, I thank you. Run away home. No, teach the new version. How are you this morning? I am feeling happy. Give a smile. Do a dance. How are you this morning? I am feeling angry. Take a deep breath. Punch a pillow. So in each stanza of this song, children come to know not only about labeling emotions, but what to do if they have that emotion. Because we always tell children, don't hit, don't hit. But what do? I am angry. How do I show my anger? So this song helps them do that. Next slide, please. There are some fairy tales also where we are teaching wrong concepts to children. At the time when we are teaching manners to children, we tell them the story of Goldilocks, who has no thank you, no sorry, no please. So there are these new versions which can be taken in the classroom. Next slide, please. Very important to understand that Just like we have a right brain and a left brain, we have a lower brain and a higher brain, which means if I am upset, my amygdala in the brain. Amygdala is such a small part in both sides of our brain, and it is our stress center. When the brain perceives stress, it shuts down the brain and the lower brain kicks in. So it's like this. I want you to put your thumb like this and close your fist. This is your thinking brain outside, and this is your lower brain. So when the lower brain, which means when the child is upset, it flips the higher brain. So which means the higher brain goes out of control. Now the lower brain is in control, and the lower brain only teaches children to scream, shout, run away, etc. So always keep this diagram in mind. This is your brain. This is how it is supposed to be for good functioning. This is your higher brain. It needs to be in command. This is your lower brain. It flips out the brain when it is upset, when it is stressed, when it is angry. So it is very important to understand when you have play-based activity in the classroom, it keeps the brain like this. Play-based, your right brain, long-term memory, everything will go into your long-term memory. So you are solving all the problems of the brain by keeping in mind left brain, right brain, lower brain, higher brain. Next slide, please. So this slide, you can study it later also. It tells you for what all do I need which part of the brain. So that is why it is important to have a lot. If you want children to behave, involve their lower brain, which means find out why they are upset, why they are angry, and calm the lower brain to get the higher brain in. Let's go to the next slide. This is why the lower brain gets upset, because the emotions influence memory. This lower brain gets affected by emotions. Keep it calm, keep it pleasant, sing songs instead of screaming to children. Let's go to the next slide. Next one, please. Yes. Now, the lower brain basically gets activated when you have stress. Toxic stress, especially. What causes toxic stress? Threats, screaming, shouting, shaming, comparing. All this causes the lower brain to flip the brain. Next slide, please. Next slide. Next slide. And when children are upset, this is what is happening in their body. Have a look at this. Their blood pressure goes up, their heart rate goes up, their respiration goes up, the perspiration goes up, blood sugar goes up, blood clotting happens, dilation of the pupils, decrease in saliva, and contraction of the spleen. So which means every time you upset a child, these are the body damages which are happening. So if you are upsetting a child multiple times in the day, this is happening to their body multiple times. And that is why we must keep stress away in the early years. Next slide, please. This is an example of stress that teachers give to children. A, they use a red ink pen. Red kind of flares up the brain. Red flips the brain. And look at what she's written. She's written dirty work. Even if somebody writes for me dirty work, my lower brain will flip my brain. Please don't do these kind of upsetting things for children. Next, please. Next, please. And next one. So instead of a red ink pen for corrections, use green, use blue, use any color. Don't use red. So it is very important, friends, that you understood today that left brain, right brain, lower brain, higher brain. If teachers were just to understand these connections, you would have a brilliant early years program, and you would be able to ensure that every child develops their brain perfectly. Let's go to the next slide. Next slide. And next one. That next one. So it is very important to understand, keep your lessons known to unknown, simple to complex, and concrete to abstract. Muscles, senses, and brain. Simple things, if you look at your lesson plans, you yourself will be able to understand, is this good for my child's brain? Is it good for the right brain? Is it good for my thinking brain? Let's go to the next one. We can actually skip the next ones because they are all about how it helps in when you tell stories, how it helps people, how it helps child's brain develop. You can read these slides. They are very easy. When we talk about 21st century skills, we talk about communication, we talk about estimation of time, we talk about working memory. When you use storytelling, like Gijubai Badeka, India's pioneer educationist, used to tell stories. He only used to teach through stories. Read his book, Divaswapna. I have written a book on Gijubai called Once Upon a Story. Stories actually gear up the brain. Next one, please. And we have the new latest thing that children are involved in called coding. Well, coding is not about developing apps, my friends. Coding, developing of apps, there may be no apps 20 years from now when this early years child becomes older. So coding is not about apps. Coding actually teaches the child's brain how to think instead of just what to think. I gave you so many examples. So when you want to make play-based thinking exercises in the classroom, coding, pre-coding activities help pre-reading, pre-numeracy, pre-writing. Let's go to the next slide. So I've written 2 books on coding, pre-coding for early years. They are non-screen based and they all have games and activities that help cognitive development, emotional development, social development, and all the holistic development, keeping in mind right brain and your thinking brain. That's it. I have finished my workshop. I just need one last slide to be shown. Next one, please. Next one. Next one. This one, the one next after this. Yes, this one. I want to leave you with this thought. The previous, yes, thank you. I want to leave you with this thought. There is a word called cognitive dissonance, and we practice it a lot. Educators should never have cognitive dissonance. What is cognitive dissonance? Cognitive dissonance means you know smoking is bad, but you will still smoke. So teachers know now that play is good for children, but we won't have play in the classroom. Why? Because parents don't like it. That's cognitive dissonance. As an educator, please don't practice cognitive dissonance. Please get convinced about the importance of play, right brain, left brain, lower brain, higher brain, and please convince parents about its importance. Thank you so much. Hussein, I just took 5 minutes more.
Thank you so much, Dr. Swati. I don't think anybody would have minded that 5 minutes more. And with all the tips and the strategies, I'm sure there was so much value add. I'm actually a father to a 6.5-year-old. So I was listening attentively because early years is a forte of my wife, not my forte. So it was really nice, listening, and I could actually relate to so many things that you were talking about. And I was just picturing my son in man. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
I think we also have Farzana ma'am who wanted to share some thoughts.
Hussein, you want to stop sharing the screen?
Yes, I'll just stop sharing the screen.
She's my favorite person.
Good evening, everyone. And it was a superb session.
Thank you.
Hussein learned as a father, I learned as a grandmother. So thank you very much I know how busy you are. But in spite of that, you took out time for our learning festival. So we highly appreciate it and thank you very much. Superb session, a lot of takeaways for all the teachers. And basically, we've got pan-India teachers. So some of them have heard you maybe for the first time because they are not members of ECA, So thank you very, very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Over to you, Hussein.
Thank you so much. And participants, if you have any questions, you can post them in the chat box. We've also enabled, so you can even unmute yourself if you'd like to ask. This is definitely a once kind of an opportunity you have, Dr. Swati. So if you have any questions in terms of any activity, something which based on what she spoke about, if you have any queries, please feel free to ask, or you could put it in the chat box.
I think everyone is thinking which brain to use. Left or right.
I think they must have had a long day now. So it's perfect.
Yeah, I think it was only for us in Maharashtra, where because of Shivaji Jayanti, we all had a brain today. Yeah, but in the other states, they had a regular school. Our participants have also shared the attendance link, so please ensure you mark it before 6 p.m. today. So I think we can call it a wrap. Thank you, Dr. Swati, once again for
Thank you
making
so
time
much.
from your schedule.
Thank you for having
Thank
me.
you so much. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.